This podcast was brought to you by adverts.
All the adverts. You cannot escape them. They are everywhere. They will follow you no matter how hard you try, no matter how many ad blocks you put up. They will follow you until someone buys their damn products.
Unless, of course, YouTube deems you family unfriendly. Enjoy the show!
Hello, and welcome to Monkey Broadcast, a monthly review discussion show with me, the Jonin Monkey.
And me, Sven the Exhausted Crusader, coming in with Jonin the Exhausted Monkey.
Yeah, we are now in the month of June, and, well, things are heating up in more than one way, and we don't do very well in heat. But hey, maybe recording this podcast we can somehow tap into the power of friendship and keep going, who knows?
Something MLP joke.
Indeed, so, yeah, let's go while the power is good, and move straight on to...
Q&A!
This is the section where we answer questions from the audience. If you'd like us to answer your questions, either leave them in the comments or send them to me via Twitter with the hashtag MBQuestion.
Or just come to the studio for one of our recordings.
I would recommend that, although I would be a bit more concerned as to how you got into my house.
Good point. Actually, don't come to the studio. Our first question comes from Roy.
What are your thoughts on the use of real actors' faces on fictional video game characters?
The term Uncanny Valley comes to mind.
Yeah, that could happen with some awkward technology. For those of you who don't know, sometimes in video games there'll be this practice of what I believe TV Tropes calls ink suit acting. Basically, they make the characters look like the actors that are voicing them. Just to give some examples, the James Bond game Everything or Nothing not only had James Bond obviously looking like Pierce Brosnan, but the game's villain, I forget his name off the top of my head because he was that generic, was played by William Dafoe, so they made it look like him. And he had an assistant played by Heidi Klum. And most amusingly, there was also the singer of the game's main theme song, Mia, who plays the character of Mia Starling.
Nice.
As if she didn't quite understand the concept of acting.
Speaking of TV tropes, another fine specimen, the Danza. Honestly, whenever I first saw this question, I thought for sure it was going to just become a discussion on mocap, and man, mocap is Uncanny Valley personified. But may I just point out the existence of Zahir in Legend of Korra, who looks distressingly like Henry Rollins?
I guess it depends on the intention of the artist, because for my money I prefer creating original designs for characters, but I do kind of approve it if they're trying to capture the feel of a franchise. I didn't mention it when I reviewed it way back when, but The Force Unleashed was another example of this. All of the characters were made to look like their voice actors in makeup, so the apprentice looks like Sam... Was it Worthing or Worthington? I forget, but whatever. Basically, the apprentice was modeled to look like him, but with a shaven haircut, and yeah, you get where this is going. So, the idea of trying to make it feel like a Star Wars movie where the actors are performing the characters rather than just fictional characters popping alongside other people from the Star Wars universe like Leia, then yeah, I can totally get it. It's when you start getting into, like Sven said, with the full-on mocap animation and, let's be honest, David Cage's games where he goes full out to try and make the characters look like the actors in the attempts of imitating Hollywood, that it starts to look a bit weird.
Yeah, and I mean, my opinion of David Cage this entire time has just been, man, just get into movies. But it's funny you should mention Willem Dafoe, because speaking of mocap, I was thinking of him in Beyond Two Souls, where the mocap doesn't exactly succeed in capturing the essence of Dafoe. That is a phrase I never thought I'd say. And it's just off enough to be really bizarre.
Yeah, it's kind of has its limitations. Like, in terms of sort of getting these subtle gestures, I totally get that. It's when you get to stuff like, well, there's no nice way to say this. When the actors are going over the top and William Dafoe is accessing his crazed hand, that it doesn't quite work because the mouth can't really stretch well with the scream.
Yeah, so in other words, it doesn't work when Willem Dafoe is being Willem Dafoe.
Although, strangely enough, he's not the worst case in that game. Elaine Page, anytime she's meant to be possessed, there's like one moment when actually she is talking to William Dafoe's character, when she is possessed by someone who's screaming out in pain, "Let us die!" And the mouth looks so freaking weird. It's...
You know, I'm sort of amazed that the walking, sentient mouth that is Willem Dafoe isn't actually the worst case in that game.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, part of me gets why they do mocap and the whole trying to get the performance to match body movements, but at the same time, part of me thinks, I guess part of it's my own personal aesthetics, but unless, like I said, you're trying to go for feeling like a specific movie franchise, I honestly would prefer it to just focus on the fictional characters and just working on traditional animation that way. Because some of the times it gets a bit ridiculous how much mocap they're using, especially since Matt Mercer was talking recently about his experience of playing Deadshot on Injustice 2, which, don't get me wrong, he loves the part and he loves the game, but he did start wondering why he had to go through facial mocap when the character wears a full face mask the entire time.
Wait. Were they really that lazy that they couldn't just animate new animations for a guy who wears a mask the entire game?
Apparently not. I mean, man's hoping that there's some kind of maskless DLC that makes it worth it, because otherwise it seems like excess work for a pretty pointless detail, honestly.
Yeah, and honestly, for a feature that, like we've been saying, I can take or leave, because, like we've said, at its best, mocap is sort of hit and miss. Especially in video games.
But yeah, we can take it or leave it. I personally, again, prefer it in franchises that are imitating movies, but generally I just prefer you create new characters and animations, basically.
Essentially. Although, once again, I am sort of forever amused and perplexed by the existence of Zahir's amazingly Rollins-esque jawline, and that's another phrase I never thought I'd say. Moving on.
Our second question is from Vice of Legends, and he asks,
If Nintendo made a Pokemon Stadium 3, ignore that Battle Revolution game on the Wii, how do you want them to do it?
Honestly, all I can say is not badly.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably lose some people on this, but the whole concept of Pokemon Stadium is kind of redundant these days.
I mean, you're not wrong, because now we have universal multiplayer, and honestly, I think the concept was sort of obsoleted by the existence of Colosseum.
Well, not only that, it's the fact that part of the big appeal of Pokemon Stadium was that you were able to take the tiny sprites that were on your Game Boy and convert it to the big screen so you could see your full team in these stylish animations. But the thing is, now that technology is upgraded so that the 3DS can use 3D models and have all of these flashy animations going on, it's, well, you kind of lose that appeal. I mean, I guess you could have it be on HD, but the difference would be so minimal.
Yeah, that was the huge appeal, seeing Pokemon in 3D, and now that's just the franchise.
I guess if you were going to make a Pokemon Stadium 3, I mean, you could have the option of transferring it from the 3DS. Wireless technology would make it a lot simpler, and you could sell it as the idea of take your team into this new arena and new challenges and all of that, but you would have to make that as kind of an optional feature and maybe just, well, focus on actually developing a single-player campaign.
Really, with hindsight, I loved Pokemon Stadium back in the day because it was what got me into Pokemon, but thinking about it, it's sort of missing the appeal of modern Pokemon games, which is any sort of plot.
That is true, yeah. That's why you would really have to focus on making some kind of big single-player campaign like maybe having the tournaments with different rule sets, like the whole Poke Cup idea where you could only have Pokemon of level 15, or a tournament where you could only use certain types, that kind of thing. That could be fun, kind of like a separate game based around the battle frontiers, but again, you need a more centralized goal other than just battle for the sake of battling. Although, that said, if you do the Poke Cup again, actually stay within the damn rules you set up with. I'm sorry, but level 15 Dragonair and Slowbro? Are you f***ing kidding me? Sorry.
Oh my god. I could go on such a rant about all the game-sharked Pokemon on enemy teams, but really, I don't think a new Pokemon Stadium game would exactly fly with a modern Pokemon audience, because there was no real point to it.
Yeah, basically what I'm saying is that you would have to enhance the single player in order to, well, like Sven said, find a point in this modern era. Because otherwise the only other thing you could do would be make an entire game based around the Pokemon mini-games.
Now that's a thought.
Because for all my gripes, I will admit, those mini-games were a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Sort of, oh god. Pokemon Mario Party.
Well, they did it with Animal Crossing, so hey, why not?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun.
And hey, they're going off doing all of that weird car mechanic stuff in Mario Parties 9 and 10, so who knows, maybe a more traditional Mario Party based around Pokemon could be a thing.
Make it happen, Game Freak.
Also, on a side note before I move on, it actually says something that in that particular Poke Cup, the way I got round it was technically a hack, in that I basically got a Kadabra, moved it into Pokemon Gold and Silver through the time capsule, had it learn Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, and Ice Punch, and then put it back in the time capsule.
Brilliant plan.
That did pretty much break Poke Cup the instant Gold and Silver was out, but anyway.
Our next question comes from Infernity Zero.
What are some recent Disney movies you'd like to see as worlds in Kingdom Hearts 3?
Moana. Because, well, for one, what can I say except you're welcome? For two, fighting alongside Maui as the guest star would be fantastic.
Yeah, I kind of figured that was coming, in all honesty, yeah.
I'd also add the Princess and the Frog, but I have no idea who the party would even fight with as the guest star. Unlike Brave, because again, I would pay real money to fight alongside Merida.
Indeed, yes. As for... it's kind of difficult for me because I haven't seen that many Disney films aside from Frozen, which was okay, I guess.
Can you feel the hype tonight?
I'm 90% sure that's gonna be it anyway. I'd be really surprised if it wasn't.
You never know, honestly, because people have the people's opinions of Frozen have sort of turned over the last 4 years because the hype train was so ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, the whole Ice Castle thing would be a cool dungeon, and full of my many, many gripes with Kingdom Hearts, they do make the boss battles very flashy, and a fight against Elsa would actually be really cool.
Honestly, I would agree with that, even though I was one of those people whose opinion on Frozen, the wreck of the Edmund McHype train. Still, though, that would be an awesome boss battle.
Indeed, yes. Otherwise, it's kind of hard. I mean, do they count Pixar films? I can't remember anymore.
I'm not even sure. I think it's just films with Disney labels.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Which brings to mind the question why they haven't somehow managed to include Toy Story yet after all the silly crap they did with The Lion King.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a Toy Story in there and maybe some of the other Pixar franchises. Although I'm not sure how they would do Wreck-It Ralph. I think that would just get ridiculously meta.
I'd sort of pay to see it, though.
Then again, there was a Tron world.
Actually, that was a thing that existed. Honestly, I forgot all about the existence of Wreck-It Ralph because I forgot it was Disney.
Yeah, well, Pixar, technically, I guess. Oh god, just thinking about it. There is the potential for a Star Wars and Marvel world, but I'm not 100% sure if I would be up for it.
Yeah, that has the potential to be super, super silly.
Yeah, I mean, it was already kind of bizarre when they went to the Pirates of the Caribbean world.
Oh god, I'd forgotten about that. Speaking of Uncanny Valley portrayals of actors, that was one bizarre Johnny Depp.
Indeed, yes. Oh yeah, actually, gotta think of it, I would find it incredibly funny if, after going to the Sleeping Beauty and Beauty and the Beast worlds, if they then ended up going to a second world that was based on the live-action versions just as lesser people.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'd sort of be down with that, because that would just be wonderfully weird.
Or even if they just went to the one world that was based on Maleficent, just to have the face turn on one of the most consistent Kingdom Hearts villains.
Oh, wow. That'd be surreal, considering that Maleficent was a sympathetic take on the character.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Just having her suddenly show up and be a good guy, or bizarrely having a showdown with the regular version of Maleficent.
I was about to say, I would pay real money for Maleficent versus Maleficent. Oh, God.
Sorceress versus sorceress, dragon versus dragon.
Self versus self, wait.
So yeah, that's our answer to that question. But this is in fact part of a pair from Infinity Zero, because the next question...
Which Final Fantasy characters that haven't been seen yet would you like to see?
Honestly, that's... Okay, actually, that's not tough to say. Kuja. 100%. Actually, pretty much anyone from Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah, I mean, definitely would be cool. The only thing I feel kind of nervous at, because, like I said, I have mixed feelings about Kingdom Hearts, and one of them being that the Final Fantasy characters always get the short straw.
You're not wrong. But I still want to see Final Fantasy IX characters, because all we've had so far is a brief cameo by Vivi. And don't get me wrong, I love Vivi, but show FF9 some love, man.
That's true. It would be nice to see more attention given to titles that haven't received that much attention, but again, I do feel just kind of... I don't know. I would like to see the characters there, but on the other hand, it's just the fact that they rarely get to do anything. I mean, the only ones that have managed to retain their personalities are the Final Fantasy VII and the Final Fantasy VIII characters, and, well, I say Final Fantasy VIII characters, it's just Squall, but, now, Squall even doesn't keep his name, he's freaking Leon!
Yeah, actually, it's sort of a sad reflection on Final Fantasy VIII that Squall is actually a better character in Kingdom Hearts than he ever was in his home game. By which I mean he actually has a personality. Beyond just being, like, a bad My Immortal knockoff of Cloud.
I mean, I guess also in fairness, for the first game at least he shared the same actor as Angel, so that was a thing.
To be fair, that was pretty awesome. That being said, I'm still sort of puzzled by their fascination with just teen drama, and, well, I'm not amazed by their fascination with Disney actors like Mandy Moore. That just made sense.
Yeah.
It is a shame that they didn't keep Mandy Moore on as Aerith, because as a voice actress, she's really improved in Tangled.
Yeah, it's one of those really weird things where they can keep some big voice actors on, but some they don't. I mean, Christopher Lee stuck around for a while and then disappeared, and then the Angel's actor David Boreanaz appeared and then disappeared, and then, what was it, Billy Zane, who was Xehanort in the Kingdom Hearts 1, and then nothing else in it.
Yeah, like, it was especially prominent with Kingdom Hearts 1. Literally the only voice actor, well, the only Final Fantasy voice actor that stayed on was Steve Burton as Cloud. For the record, I'm fantastically pleased that he did, because he is the perfect Cloud. But they've just sort of come and gone. That being said, I do prefer the second voice actress for Yuffie. Props to you, Meg Whitman. You were also an excellent Katara.
Indeed, yes.
Long story short, I get what you mean. One of the big problems is that they sort of tone down the Final Fantasy characters. Like, changing their designs to fit more with the universe, that sort of thing. But honestly, I think that would work with Final Fantasy IX, because it's not exactly the most grim game.
That is true, in fairness.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking, like, post-apocalyptic hellscape Final Fantasy VII here.
True.
And honestly, I would just pay to see more Vivi, if nothing else, because he fits right in with the Kingdom Hearts universe.
Actually, also, now that I think about it, they did have characters from... I know it's not strictly Final Fantasy, but in terms of Square Enix, they did have characters from The World Ends With You show up in Dream Drop Distance. So, I would actually kind of like to see if they can get the rights for it, characters from other Square Enix properties. Maybe something like a Dragon Quest, or might be a long way off, but Chrono Trigger might be a fun step.
Ooh, I forgot they were involved with those series. I'd like to see that too. And now that you mentioned Square Enix properties, I'm just imagining Sora, Donald, and Goofy staring up at awe at Agent 47 from the Hitman games, like, who are you? And Agent 47's just like, the f***.
Oh god, I just imagine trying to be stealthy with Sora, Donald, and Goofy.
I know, right? Oh god, if they don't... Okay, I know they're not gonna do it, so I'm just gonna write a crack fic when we're done here. Makes a mental note.
Actually, oh god, this is the dumbest image. I just have this weird mental image of the group trying to sneak into an anime convention, and then Hitman just stealing someone's cosplay and putting that on.
Hitman cosplaying as Cloud. It's like, okay, because of how Cloud dresses in Advent Children and Kingdom Hearts 2, he literally just steals someone's Cloud wig and looks just like him. No one notices a thing. And considering some of the kills in the Hitman series, that actually is disturbingly plausible. Like, we're talking a franchise where at one point 47 dresses up as a clown, and at one point he has to infiltrate a pool party. So, I mean, it could happen.
Indeed, yes.
Now that we've both put that image in your heads, I guess that's the best answer we could... Actually, before we sign off on this, Final Fantasy XIV characters. I'm not a huge MMO player, because ADHD is awesome. I basically just suck at them, and Final Fantasy XIV is no exception. However, I love the universe, and I would love to see some of the fixtures in that game transfer over to Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, I've not played Final Fantasy XIV myself. I just don't really have the time or the patience for MMOs, but I do freely admit, from what I've seen of Final Fantasy XIV, it would be cool to have fixtures from that in there.
And while we're on the subject of modern Final Fantasy, I'm gonna catch so much flack for this from pretty much everyone, but I would love to see them insert Lightning and actually make her a character.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of did it in Dissidia, or at least, made her character something.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's really frustrating. When Lightning is done well, I really like her. The problem is, she's not done well in her home games.
Yeah.
It's sort of the same issue with Squall, although honestly I prefer Lightning to Squall. But then again, I preferred Final Fantasy XIII to Final Fantasy VIII, so
yeah.
There you go.
The lesser of two evils, but yeah.
I had no idea Final Fantasy was like the 2016 presidential election, but...
God. Yeah, I think that's the best answer we can give, so it's best for us to move on.
Our next comment comes from the illustrious Toon Junkie.
Everyone knows that if Wonder Woman catches you with her lasso of truth, you are forced to say the truth no matter what. So here's my question for you. If you were caught by the lasso of truth, could you still hide your secrets from Wonder Woman by just saying random but true facts and opinions rather than answering her questions?
Toon Junkie? I'm sort of amazed, because that's actually a legit question.
Yeah, I mean, maybe something in Wonder Woman's, 40-year-long comic career that does say that they have to reveal the truth to a question specifically, but At the moment, I can't think of one, so yeah, unless you got very specific, it wouldn't exactly be a lie if you just spouted nonsense.
Well, in that case, let me just tell you this. If Wonder Woman ever, for whatever reason, catches me in her lasso, most likely all she'll get out of me is a bunch of really handy recipes from Gordon Ramsay and Chef John from Food Wishes.
In fact, actually, that kind of reminds me of, there's a scene from Justice League Unlimited, the animated cartoon that was released during my teen years, made by the same guys who did Batman the Animated series, funnily enough. But there was a character named The Question who has an incredible mind for investigation, but is a conspiracy nut. So when he gets captured and is tortured, before the heroes can rescue him, the interrogator is basically electrocuting him and going, "Tell me what you know." And he's just spouting off random conspiracy theories over and over. And again, can't remember all the lines on the top of my head, but the one exchange is, "The little bits of plastic on your shoelaces are called anklets. Their true purpose is deeply sinister."
Okay, so basically a combination of Stephen Moffat's Sherlock Holmes and Alex Jones.
That does actually work, yes.
That's deeply disturbing.
And yeah, it was an awesome scene, and I can imagine something similar would happen if someone does figure that idea when they're caught by the lasso of truth, unless it turns out that the lasso of truth is just a nickname for the lasso of truth that forces you to stay on topic at all times.
Man, if that's the case, I'd be especially screwed. I mean, you've seen the tangents I go on.
Indeed, yes. Well, I could just go like, "Damn it! No! They've taken away my one strength!"
Oh my god, Wonder Woman has cured my ADHD.
Oh god.
That was a terrible joke, but I made it about myself, so it's fine.
Oh god. And moving swiftly on from that, we have a more regular Toon Junkie question just to finish us off.
I have some mysterious plot-relevant space cargo that needs to be taken to a spaceport. Do you know of a good space crew with spaceships with few space morals that would transport my space cargo through space for a reasonable amount of space dollars in space?
Space. I think that's the quote from Portal 2. Also, Han Solo or the crew of the Firefly.
Yeah, that just about works. Admittedly, Han Solo is much harder to get these days, but you can still get to Chewbacca, I guess.
Oh, God! I totally forgot about that. Hey, Toon Junkie, are you still dipping into necromancy by any chance?
That would be a major plot twist.
Oh god, Han Solo zombie.
I now have this image of what would happen if they got it wrong, and instead of bringing back Han Solo, they just bring back Indiana Jones.
Oh god. Makes mental note, right crack fic.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be your best option. I mean, if it is plot relevant cargo, sod's law, someone's gonna try and raid it anyway, and you've got a better chance of named characters staying alive than nameless mooks.
Yeah. Also, just as one last suggestion, you could go for the Ebon Hawk and its crew, but that you'd run the risk of being force-choked by Revan, so it's a 50-50.
Yeah. On that note, that brings another Q&A session to an end. Thank you guys, these are a good bunch of questions. Keep sending them in, they take this show to a bunch of weird and interesting places.
Yeah, we discover things about ourselves that not even we knew.
Indeed. But now, it's time for us to move on to the next section, which is...
Reviews!
This is the section where the two of us review something we've read, watched, or played this month. So I guess I better get the ball rolling. For my end, I'm going to review an anime that I mentioned briefly in QuickTime Reviews because I watched the Japanese subtitled version about a couple of months back, and then I started watching the English dub because Funimation have removed the subscriber-only status, meaning that I can now watch it online. Albeit with adverts, but I don't mind that so much. The anime in question is Interviews with Monster Girls. So, just to quickly explain the premise, Interviews with Monster Girls takes place in a Japanese high school, and it's basically a slice of life story, but there is a slight twist. In this world, monsters from folklore, vampires, doll hands, succubi, etc., are in fact humans that were born with unique abilities that kind of got exaggerated and overhyped due to people not understanding them in the medieval ages. And one biology teacher named Tetsuo Takahashi is really interested in this subject, and he discovers that the school he's currently working at has at least 4 demi-humans, or demis as they're called for short. These demis include Hikari, a hyperactive vampire, Kyoko, a mild-mannered doll hand, and Yuki, a snow maiden who is kind of cold and standoffish, pardon the pun, but eventually opens up over the course of the series. And there's even a teacher named Saki who is a succubus. So Tetsuo decides that he's going to interview each and every one of them to try and learn more about their experiences and help them however he can. Then shenanigans happen.
As they so often do in anime. Also, may I just add that just from the title and the premise, I'm just imagining this guy interviewing a Navajo skinwalker. I'm just trying to cosplay, leave me alone.
It probably could happen, but yeah. I will confess right now, this review might be a bit shorter than most, really because it's a slice of life comedy series first and foremost. Like, there is some drama going on in there, and it does have a bit more world building, but regardless, a lot of the time the episodes don't really have a plot. It's just a series of skits connected by a very loose thread.
Honestly, that sounds like my sort of anime with my attention span nowadays.
Yeah, it's basically just Tetsuo asking the girl some questions, and that usually leads into some other shenanigans, and then eventually we just reach a punchline by the end, basically. Just to give an example of one episode, the girls realise that they're all either doing really well, or, in Hikari's case, completely sucking at their study grades, so they all decide to get together to have a study session, and that leads into a whole skit there. And then there's a final bit where Hikari's having an interview with Tetsuo, who is still trying to encourage her to actually study and improve her grades.
I feel that.
And that leads into a whole gag scene where, okay, this is gonna sound really fucking weird out of context.
That's about 90% of anime, so go for it.
Yeah, where she is trying to determine which one of their arms is best to nibble on.
Oh, so basically she's Ilyena from Path of Radiance.
Kind of. It's more this weird thing where, basically, just to explain, the demis, they all have their weird quirks, and that kind of leads into one positive point of the series, in that they actually go into a large amount of depth into trying to make these individual quirks believable. Like, in the case of Hikari, she's a vampire, but she doesn't have the desire to suck blood because the government provides blood packs on a regular basis as part of its demi support program. But the one thing she does occasionally get is that her teeth get so itchy she occasionally needs to nibble on someone's arm just to sort of let that tension off, which actually does lead into one of the best visual gags of the series when someone asks her, hey, what do you do when that happens normally? She just goes, yeah, I just asked my sister to do it. And it cuts to this amusing image where her sister, with this deadpan expression, is reading a book with Hikari just going, nom 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 on her outstretched arm, and then she just casually goes, turn the page, please. Okay. Nom 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 nom.
Wow. I never knew that I would feel so intrinsically attached by my very soul to a vampire with no attention span.
But yeah, it's like that with all the characters in that it develops each and every single one of their demi-quirks into this kind of completely real and relatable thing, and it does it with a hell of a lot of restraint. Like, there's anime, so there is some fan service, but nowhere near as bad as it could have been. Like, all three of the girls, Kyoko, Yuki, and Hikari, they do develop some kind of attraction towards Tetsuo. In fact, Kyoko flat out admits that she has a full-on crush on the guy. But this is the positive thing. I really, really like Tetsuo as a protagonist, namely because as a teacher, I think he's meant to be roughly in his 30s or at the very least late 20s, and he acts like a goddamn adult. So when someone decides to ask him, if a student revealed they had a crush on you, do you think you could form a relationship? And he just flatly says, no, I could not return their feelings because they're high school kids. I cannot think of them as anything other than students. Which, you may be wondering, isn't that common sense? To which I say, you now know why I'm kind of worried about the state of anime right now.
Wow.
That's why I really do like Tetsuo as a character, mainly because the fact that he's an adult means we get past a lot of stupid anime where he's crushing on high school girls, even though that sort of thing would get him fucking arrested.
Yeah, I mean, real quick.
And also, just in terms of his reactions with Saki as well, because the way her Sakiba's powers work is that they kind of have an aphrodisiac effect, which means she can't touch anyone or wear too little clothing. Like, she has to basically walk around school wearing a big zip-up jacket, because if she doesn't, like, just the side of a very tight t-shirt underneath, even if it doesn't show that much skin, would cause her aphrodisiac effect to go off and drive people crazy. And the way she develops a relationship with Tetsuo is that there is one moment when they accidentally touch at one point, and Tetsuo, rather than doing the standard anime protagonist thing, which is going, just basically perfect on the guy, he actually has enough respect for the woman and enough self-control to just suck it up, say have a nice day, and walk off without having to do all of that over-the-top perverted stick.
Huh. I'm actually surprised.
Yeah, which, again, says a lot about anime right now, but, yeah, that is one of the reasons I like it. And also, because of that, it leads to much better comedy in the long run, because there's actually one amusing scene that happens is, there's a moment when Saki, like I said, she develops a crush on Tetsuo, and then someone pretty much dares her to try and use the aphrodisiac effect to try and get the relationship going and to sort of break up the will they, won't they thing. And she kind of undoes the jacket on the pretense of, let's do an experiment just so I can show you. And Tetsuo gives her this sort of blank stare and goes, oh wow, really nice, it completely changes your image. And it kind of cuts between their inner monologues at that point. Saki's wondering, wait, no reaction? Do I even have any powers at this point? And Tetsuo's is, oh my freaking god, my mind is currently regressing to that of a hormonal teenager. Dear god, she is the embodiment of sex appeal. Okay, just be cool. Do not stare at her body. Just, I don't know, focus on her hairline or something. Her smooth, silky hairline. Damn it!
Oh my god. I'm faintly amused and faintly disturbed.
Yeah, I mean, it's never really played with any kind of seriousness. It's always played on the goofy side of things. But yeah, that's kind of why I really like Tetsuo as the protagonist. Just because he serves as a good mentor to all of these young kids. And also, again, shows more control than almost half of the protagonists in any other anime.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's super uncommon, but at least the series is self-aware enough to acknowledge the disturbing aspect of that whole thing.
Yeah, I should clarify, I'm not saying that no character should find anyone attractive, I'm just saying I would prefer it if a character did have the self-control Tetsuo has and basically not objectifying someone just because he finds them attractive.
Man, I could suggest passing that lesson on to a lot of protagonists.
Yeah.
And most of them aren't even in anime.
Yeah, unfortunately. But the reason I say this review is short is because, like I said, there's not really that much plot. Any further attempts to review this would basically just be either breaking down entire characters or just listing the scenes verbatim, or describing why a joke is funny, which ironically often makes a joke, well, shite, if I mean, there is no faster way to kill comedy than to go, well, you see, the reason this is so funny is because the punchline has been delivered after a pause, which allows a bit of awkwardness to it. You know, it's...
Yeah, I get that.
It's still, like I said, an enjoyable show, because the world-building aspect keeps the story interesting. The explanations of the quirks are always really well thought out. The animation is done fairly well. It's a nice, bright, colourful world, and the voice acting in both languages is really good, because Funimation did the dub for this one, and from what I can tell, I mean, I could be wrong, but a lot of these look like fairly new voice actors, so not the usual ones you see in Funimation's dubs, and they all do a great job with the comedy here. In fact, there were several jokes which I liked in the subtitled version, but loved even more in the dub, just because I could understand the language and thus appreciate the performance more, including... One of my favourite line reads, in that whole jacket removal scene I mentioned earlier, Saki, who in the English dub is performed by Morgan Garrett, when she's unzips the jacket and goes,
there! Ta-da! So, what do you think? Kill me now!
Excellent. I'm pretty sure I would have the exact same reaction.
Yeah, the English dub is really great at bringing all these characters to life, because again, these aren't very archetypal characters. Like Hikari, you could say that she's like the energetic Genki girl, but Brit April doesn't use that as an excuse to be hyper all the time. She is able to reel it back in for when there's a serious moment or when she's having to be deadpan,
So you're dealing with a lot of range, in other words.
Yeah, and Chris George, Brit April, and Terry Doty all do really excellent jobs with these characters. So, yeah, all in all, it's a good executed series, and the thing is, normally I would reserve a series like this for the quickfire reviews, just for, well, like, as you can kind of tell, I'm sort of meandering about here and not much focus. But here's the thing. Sometimes with the way my mind works, I tend not to obsess over whether something is really good or really bad. Like, if something is really well polished, great, that's well done, but often there'll be some kind of concept or character or hook that just kind of elevates a series for me. So even if overall the series is just okay or mildly amusing, if there's that one concept that stands out to me, it will usually be elevated and I'll keep bringing it up. It's part of the reasons why I still kind of like Man of Tai Chi, even though, yeah, I will freely admit that's a very flawed martial arts movie.
Yeah, I mean, some things you just have to appreciate for the fact that they are ridiculous.
Indeed, yes. In this case, however, it's more of a theme that's running through. See, the whole Demi concept is one giant allegory for people with disabilities.
Oh my god, that just registered with me.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. The initial premise is just, oh, okay, vampire in the school, whatever. Like, that happens in anime, and who am I kidding? It happens in pretty much all fiction across the world.
Pretty much.
I mean, it's the whole existence of Twilight, for God's sake. But anyway, the way they focus it a bit more, they kind of focus on the elements that Hikari is a cheerful high schooler, but because of her vampiric nature, she can't stay out in sunlight too long, and even extreme heat kind of overwhelms her a bit. Her senses are super enhanced, so she can pick up on things that other people can't, etc., etc. Basically, the quirks I mentioned is the little difficulties that they have to kind of put up with, and a lot of the whole world building is basically either a scientific explanation of that little quirk or an explanation of how that person deals with it, and obviously, I'm not the first person to have mentioned it. In fact, many people have picked up on it.
In fact, the only person who didn't pick it up was a guest on a podcast run by Mother's Basement.
They said something that kind of infuriated me, because everyone else on the podcast pointed out that this is basically an allegory for disabilities, and he went, only the super convenient ones. And I really wanted to smack that guy across the face. I'm sorry.
Go on.
It plays into a lot of that mentality. I mean, yeah, you could argue that they all look normal so that people could still consider them cute because it's anime, you need merchandise based around cute girls, but at the same time, it's just something that really irritates me because it's that kind of thing of, oh, well, you don't look disabled, you must be perfectly fine. Like, if you don't mind me getting political for a second, this is something that's happening a lot in my country right now, where people are sort of going, we're using this to reclassify your disability. I mean, you've got 4 working limbs and you seem to be functioning perfectly normally. Why can't you have a job? Because I have an emotional anxiety that makes it really hard to work. Oh, everyone gets stressful at work. Go in!
Oh, God, and I fucking hate that because it's just the prevailing attitude. Like, I have friends with invisible disabilities like anxiety, depression, and you know something? I have never in my life been more sympathetically tired of the phrase, oh, just do yoga, at any point in my life. Just the general lack of sympathy for people with invisible disabilities, and Jesus Christ, in some case, visible ones. Look at the f*** we elected in November. The lack of sympathy astounds me, and I have a collection of phrases that I can officially do without for the rest of my life. I'll give you a few of them. Oh, just do yoga. Oh, everyone gets sad. Oh, everyone gets nervous. Oh, just try paying more attention. Oh, especially that last one. Hey, you know something that all of us can occasionally do too? Go sit on a pineapple. How about going and thinking on that one for a while?
Yeah, it's one of those frustrating things, which is why I really do like this show. In fact, Yuki and the whole aspect of being a snow woman, that is, I don't know if depression would be the best word, but it is definitely an allegory for anxiety, or at least something on that nature, because her powers are activated by negative emotion. One of the later scenes and one of the few bits of drama is when Tetsuo basically finds her in the corridor by herself because, okay, this gives some context, because she was afraid that her powers would go out of control, Elsa style, she's enforced this idea of being cold and standoffish, but in turn, that gives everyone the impression that she is, again, sorry for the unintentional pun, an ice queen, and thus they start gossiping about her, which everyone kind of points out, yeah, that's something high school girls do, and there's no way you can avoid that. But because her power focuses on negative emotion, that allowed her to build it all up, take the attacks personally, to the point where she is literally leaking out cold air all around her. That was kind of one of the more heartfelt moments in the show, and it's one of the reasons, again, why I really like Tetsuo, because he provides the role of a really good mentor, who actually uses the interview to just kind of have a chat with Yuki, basically let her talk through all her woes and woes, and then with a little bit of experimentation, he suddenly figures out, okay, I think I've figured out what triggers your powers and everything. It's never going to reach the point where you could actually harm someone. You don't need to worry about this anymore. And she ends up crying in happiness because it's like a massive weight's been lifted off her shoulders, and she spends the rest of the series opening up with other people because of that. That kind of positivity and that sort of, I guess for lack of a better term, acceptance of it is a strong, inspiring thing. And it also culminates in one speech which is so far one of my favourite speeches that has occurred all year. There is a scene, actually I think it might have been at the end of the same episode, holy crap.
Awesome.
Hikari's sister, who doesn't quite trust him yet, when Tetsuo starts asking her questions about, how does Hikari handle with this? How does Hikari handle with that? She butts in, well, two things. First off, she expresses the irritation that everyone keeps saying, oh, Hikari doesn't seem to behave like a vampire. In fact, she seems to be like a normal high school girl. And then she kind of turns around and says to Tetsuo, hey, you do realize that she is also half human, or does that bit not interest you? And Tetsuo comes to a stop and goes, okay, I need to clarify this. And he launches into a speech which I really wish I could just have the entire thing play out verbatim, but But the last time I did that with Charlie Chaplin's Let Us All Unite speech, I had a copyright strike against it, so...
Oh dear.
So I won't do that, but I'll instead focus on the final point he gives at the end of the speech, and I quote,
"It isn't how you're born that makes you who you are. It's how you decide to live with what you are. However, we can't be allowed to neglect the demi-nature of someone either, because they have obstacles that we as humans can only imagine. You can't look at things from only one side. It has to be both. If you only see the demi-nature, you'll miss their individuality. And if you only see the human nature, you'll never understand their struggles."
And that really does kind of sum it up, because... Okay, I've been tap dancing about this for a while, but I think it's probably best that I just came out and say it. This really rings true for me, not just because I am a liberal social justice warrior or what have you, but because I am autistic. I've never really mentioned it before now for two reasons. One, it was never relevant to any video before this. And second, because, well, it's been a kind of personal struggle I was going through with most of my life. Like, I've always known I'm autistic, but I'm never really sure how to process that information, with fear that if I ever did, that basically revokes my right of being normal in any conversation. I mean, my god, have you seen the internet? Have you?
Oh, sweet holy Jesus. Yeah. Let me just say this. I think it's bad enough whenever people just say, "Oh, I'm so ADHD." I can only imagine what it would be like in someone else's situation with a condition that's basically used as a punchline nowadays.
Yeah, oh god, I cannot tell you how much I freaking hate that. Like, I've seen people who... There's a fangirl scream in the background, and they interpret it as autistic fangirl scream because, oh god, yeah, only autistic people would ever have a positive emotion with anything, especially if it's kid-related. Sweet fucking Jesus.
Yeah, I could go on and on and on about those wonderful examples of humanity, but that's sort of not the point of your review.
Yeah, and I was also afraid that there would also be the opposite, which comes from well-meaning people, but at the same time I was afraid that if I mentioned it, some more defensive fans would start using that like a shield of, oh, of course he comes off as obnoxious at this point, he has autism. Like, no, I don't want that. If I'm acting like an obnoxious ass, tell me. It's the only way I'll learn, okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've noticed. Just with disabilities in general, and this goes with physical and invisible disabilities, it tends to go up one of three streets. The truly sympathetic street, which usually comes from people who also have disabilities. The openly hostile street, which is becoming more prevalent after the actions of certain politicians in certain Western countries. And the well-meaning street, which, even though it comes from the best of intentions, just advising someone to do yoga and feel better is not the best advice.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why this show kind of resonated with me, because, well, by sheer coincidence, I was actually working on a project that did help me learn more about autism and gave me kind of the same scientific explanation Tetsuo gave, so I now have a better understanding of, well, first off, what exactly autism actually means, for a start, and
always handy.
And also, with that speech, it's kind of reached a point where I can just sort of go, you know what, f*** it, it's part of who I am, no matter how much I try to pretend to be normal. You can't see the air quotes, but I'm using them. Normal.
Yeah, and I mean, really, I say this as someone who comes from sort of a similar position. What even quantifies as normal? I mean, whenever, again, we're just generally supposed to accept that the leaders of the free world are a bunch of vicious, backbiting psychopaths, really, what counts as normal anymore anyway?
Indeed, yes. So, getting it back on point, that speech and just the show as a whole kind of resonated with me for that reason, because, well, it explores these issues in a really positive manner. Like, one of the things that happens in the first episode is Kyoko is a doll hand, which, for those who don't know, it's basically based on the Headless Horseman, in that it's someone who has to carry their head around because it's not attached to their body, but it still works, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, pretty much.
So she's the one who counts as having a visible demi-power, and one of the first things that she freely admits is that she kind of wishes that everyone wouldn't be so standoffish, because it's like they're afraid to say anything in case it offends her, which she gets, and she likes that they're being understandable, but at the same time she wants to be, just accepted and not have everyone be so tense all the time. And that's also kind of why I love Hikari as well, because she breaks the ice by just walking in and going, "Oh hey, so you're a dull hand, tell me, is it really frustrating having to carry your head around with you everywhere?" Then she just goes, "It can be irritating at times, but honestly, I've just gotten used to it by now." And that just completely breaks the ice and just has a normal conversation rolling out of that. And that's really the best way to do it. There's no hand-wringing, there's no posturing, it's just, this is who they are, this is their quirks, and then they just get on with it. In fact, that's also the reason why I am much more forgiving of the whole slice of life. There is no plot, it's just things meandering around. And also why I'm forgiving of the fact that there's little to no drama, because it basically just goes, yeah, these girls are different from most people, but they just get on with it. It just kind of normalizes it, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it discusses it without breaking out an orchestra and fanfare for it. Sort of like how The Legend of Korra discussed that one issue that everyone now knows the show for.
So, yeah, that's basically the long and short of it. I just love the way this show handles that issue. I like the fact that it just presents it as an everyday life, that they can just deal with the individual quirks and just still have a completely carefree life that isn't melodrama every 5 minutes. And I like the fact as well that a lot of their personality gimmicks aren't directly tied to them. Like, there is one scene where Hikari, well, there are two things about Hikari. First, Tetsuo, he comes to the conclusion that the reason vampires don't like garlic in the legends is because they're predators and their senses are all enhanced. And then they find out that Hikari actually loves garlic because the fact that it smells so strong and repulsive to her is what drives her towards it.
Sounds like my reaction to garlic.
And there is also this one gag that could have been a bit of drama, but then at the last minute wasn't. Hikari's sister Himari, she's sort of just venting to Tetsuo one day, like, "Ugh, it's so annoying. Like, every morning she asks me to do this twin bun hairstyle, and I have just no idea why she doesn't do it herself. And in fact, this morning I just refused to do it and walked out on her, because it's about time she learned some responsibility." And then Tetsuo casually mentions, actually in Vampire Legends it says they can't see their own reflection. Maybe that's the reason why she asked to do it. And Himari then starts getting worried and overly protective, and actually kind of just sort of runs out to find Hikari, because she then thinks, if that's the case, I think I've just done something incredibly horrible. And she runs into the girls' bathroom, only to find that Hikari has already done upset buns, and she goes, "Oh hey, you came just in time, I just fixed it up." Wait, if you could do it on your own, why do you ask me to do it? Well, to be honest, it's fiddly and I just can't be bothered.
I relate to this character on an almost ethereal level.
I could go on, but that's pretty much the reason in a nutshell why I'm so fond of interviews with Monster Girls, just because it does that whole representation so well in a really amusing, lighthearted, carefree package, which I think, as far as diversity go, is a really big step forward, and yeah, I just freaking love it, frankly.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's a good way of putting it, because that's really been my opinion all along of how to add diversity to media. Don't announce it with like a stage performance, a musical cast, and trumpet fanfare. Just normalize talking about shit that the moral guardians have refused to discuss since the Reagan years.
Yeah, that is definitely the best way of going about it. It's a part of who they are, but it doesn't define who they are, is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. They have their struggles, but they're people. Not ethereal beings, and not beneath us, as some people like to think. They're just people.
Indeed. So, with all of that, it's time for us to move into the last section, which is Quickfire Reviews. This is the section where the two of us review anything else we've read, watched or played, but within the maximum time limit of 60 seconds. Sven, do you have anything?
I do indeed, actually, and I'll try to get through this without stumbling over my words too much.
Okay then. Good luck. Your time starts now.
Crusader Kings 2, a Civilization-style strategy game released in 2012 centered around the, obviously the Crusades era of the medieval period. Very fun game, very in-depth, extremely long-winded. And let me just say this, I did not know that there were so many creative ways in which my various kings of my dynasties could die.
I'll just say this, the most legendary one so far has been, I believe his name was King Imran of the Abyssinian dynasty. He had the personality trait gluttonous, which led to him getting the ever so flattering dynastical nickname King Imran the Fat. In a random event, he died by falling through a balcony.
Oh god.
I will never be able to top that. That's the highlight of my Crusader Kings 2 life. Everything from this point on is pretty much just polish. My king died by being so immensely fat he fell through a balcony. That's basically the summary of the random events in Crusader Kings 2.
Oh, wow.
And just as another example of this game's humor, in one instance, I decided I would get rid of one of my political opponents with an assassination plot, and I swear this is true. The plot succeeded and the flavor text said, and I quote, "People seem to be completely buying into a positive explanation of the lone bowman."
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to try and look this up, I think.
It's completely worth it. If you have about 18 months to spare for one dynasty, you'll have a great deal of fun.
Okay then, I'll definitely keep that in mind. I've been looking into getting into PC game anyway, namely because I've had to buy a lot of camera equipment, which means I might not be getting the PlayStation 4 as planned, but anyway, I have 2 video games to review, so the first one I'll get done pretty quickly.
Fire Emblem Echoes. I will be reviewing this next month, but let me just give my quick thoughts here right now. I am really enjoying it so far. The mechanics are based on an old Fire Emblem on the NES, meaning that you do have to kind of get your head around it if you're used to other games in the series, but otherwise, it is really good. The balancing is well done, the presentation is freaking amazing, from the artwork to the fully voiced cutscenes, that's an amazing feat for Fire Emblem, and some really nice balancing out so it's not ridiculously hard like Shadow Dragon was. So yeah, all in all, enjoyed it so far, and I'm really looking forward to remakes done with this level of polish in the future.
Man, that's relief, and honestly, I'm just glad that they released it in the West, unlike Fire Emblem 12, a game that I love, but I have to jump through loops to play.
Yeah, people have been recommending that to me as well, but yeah, like you, I'm not sure if I want to jump through all the hoops.
If you do decide to, it's a wonderful game, but I can completely understand if you don't.
Yeah, sigh.
Under Night in Birth, a fighting game that is made with Arc Systems and based on the same studio that made Melty Blood. A game I would only describe as successful if its intention was to kill any positive feelings I had towards it going forward. This is possibly the dullest fighting game I've ever played, and my god, I have not cared so little for a cast of characters I've only played with for an hour. It's just so bad of a setup that's so poorly explained, and these bland characters, I do not give a fuck about any of them. I'm almost over the time limit, but you know what, I'm also going to add one thing. I put this game down to 1 star because I figured it would be tough given that, well, it's a fighting game that's par for the course. I had the most insultingly easy time in my life. I mean, this is the difficulty setting where I will only get hit if I literally stand there for a minute not doing anything.
Huh. So yeah, don't pick it up.
No, really, I hadn't actually gotten that from your review. Just holy crap. I mean, I'm bad at fighting games and don't play them, but wow.
Yeah, that game was... It was not worth the rental.
Okay, that's for the ages as far as bad game box art quotes goes. It wasn't worth a rental.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's probably best that I put that game out of my mind and get back some positivity, because, well, we have reached the end of the show, and I think we want to put it off on a high note, especially since we went through that whole personal positive review and everything.
Yeah. To be fair, though, I do love it whenever we do that, but after that, I think it's best if we don't focus too much on crappy fighting games.
Indeed. So yeah, once again, as per usual, thank you to everyone who sent in questions, and if you'll forgive me for coming off like a BBC announcer, if you've been affected by any of the issues in this program, feel free to let us know in the comment section, because that's what it's there for. And it would be nice if we actually had some positive comments on this subject for a change.
Yeah, here's hoping we can count on sympathy from at least our audience.
But yeah, until next month, I've been the Jonin Monkey.
And I've been Sven the Crusader. Keep calm and beware the purple balconies.
That was Monkey Broadcast, a monthly review and discussion show hosted by the Jonin Monkey and Sven the Crusader. If you feel you've been the subject of slander or that your copyright is misused, send an email to thejoninmonkey@yahoo.co.uk. For more news and media reviews, follow me on Twitter @thejoninmonkey, and go to thejoninmonkey.podbean.com for previous podcasts and MP3 downloads. All music used belongs to the original owners. Until next month, have fun, kids!